You ever hear a story so unbelievable, so quietly heroic, that you question how it never made headlines? I mean, we celebrate the loud, the flashy, the loudest voice in the room, but what about the person who just walks in, changes everything, and walks right back out without saying a word? That's the story of Evelyn Cole. Not many people in Summit Ridge remembered Evelyn. A quiet, reclusive woman in her 60s, lived alone on the edge of town in a weather-worn A-frame cabin tucked between two ridgelines. She drove a dusty blue pickup with a broken tail light, shopped only early in the mornings, and never stayed long enough for small talk. Folks called her the widow, assuming her story was the same old small-town tragedy. But nobody really knew. That all changed on the day of the state-level tactical rescue drill. The town had been selected as a demo site for a statewide search and rescue competition. Military, SWAT, EMS, even volunteer fire crews. It was meant to be a showcase, complete with mock hostage scenarios and obstacle courses. Everyone from the governor's office to big city precincts sent reps. Summit Ridge High School football field was turned into a base camp. Fancy tents, helicopters, spotlights, the whole 9 yards. It wasn't Evelyn's scene. But fate has a weird sense of timing. You see, one of the drillsome mock fire rescue involved rappelling down a 2-story training tower to recover a weighted dummy. It was designed to simulate battlefield evacuations. Evelyn had wandered in that morning to drop off a box of supplies at the Red Cross tent. She volunteered sometimes, usually for logistics, nothing public. She didn't know she'd walk straight into a disaster. The wind kicked up hard. One of the scaffolds hadn't been properly secured. When the volunteer firefighter reached the second floor with his harness, a sudden gust tore the tarp and blew the edge rig loose. The man slipped, his line snapped. He dangled upside down, unconscious, 20 feet in the air, swinging. Panic set in. Nobody moved. Except Evelyn. Without a word, she sprinted to the base of the tower, grabbed a loose rigging line, cinched it around her waist, and started climbing hand over hand up a cold steel frame most people wouldn't dare touch without gloves or gear. She didn't hesitate, just moved. At the top, she looped the strap, anchored the firefighter's weight against the main beam, then get rappelled down using her own hands and boots, pulling his weight alongside her like it was nothing. It wasn't until she hit the ground and laid him flat for CPR that someone shouted, "Who is she?" Paramedics rushed in. Cameras swiveled. Reporters hovered. Evelyn. She dusted off her jeans, tipped her hat, and started walking toward her truck. She would have made it out clean, except for the voice behind her. A grizzled veteran from the National Guard, Captain Ray Morales, stepped forward with wide eyes. "Cole?" he asked, not certain yet. "Evelyn Cole? Afghanistan. 5th Medevac Battalion." She turned, and you could feel the air change. What followed was not a news story. It was a homecoming. Turns out, Evelyn Cole was one of the most decorated field medics in the history of her battalion. Bronze Star, Combat Medical Badge, Navy Cross. She'd pulled more men out of kill zones than most could count and never once spoke of it. After her last tour, she retired without ceremony, moved to the quiet hills of Summit Ridge, and faded into the background. But the background remembers. Captain Morales told the crowd how she once stabilized a double amputee under fire while directing evac helicopter traffic over comms. How she carried a wounded gunner 2 miles through open terrain because the Humvee broke down. She didn't walk away from war, he said. She carried the war out of her so the rest of us didn't have to. Word spread. Later that week, Summit Ridge Town Council invited Evelyn to a town hall meeting. She didn't go, but she did send a note. Please redirect any honors or donations to the Summit Ridge Veterans Shelter. The council named the shelter after her anyway. That would have been enough for most people. But Evelyn's story wasn't done. A month later, an incident rocked the nearby county. A bus carrying a group of troubled teens from a juvenile center veered off a mountain road during a thunderstorm. Mudslide, down trees, no radio contact. The rescue teams were overwhelmed. Evelyn heard it over the ham radio she kept in her shed. Before the official response teams could organize, she was already hiking into the hills with a pack of supplies, a flare gun, and a chainsaw. She cleared a 1/4 mile of fallen debris alone, built a temporary bridge with rope and tarp, and set up signal fires so the helicopters could land. When emergency crews finally reached the site, They found 12 teenagers in thermal blankets, sipping hot broth each with a handwritten name tag taped to their chest. Evelyn was treating the last one for a sprained ankle. They tried to airlift her out. She declined. "Plenty more still stuck down there," she said. "I'll keep clearing until you can get through." That's how the legend grew. By the time the story reached state press, people were calling her the ghost medic. A documentary team showed up. She refused the interview but handed them a thumb drive with this message: "Highlight the kids, not me. They're the ones still fighting." Turns out, she had spent the last 5 years mentoring at-risk youth in secret, teaching them wilderness survival, resilience, emergency first aid. Half the kids at that juvenile center? She knew their names already. She'd been mailing their parents handwritten updates with no return address. The mayor offered her a medal. She mailed it back. "Respect doesn't need a ribbon," the note read. "It needs action." But here's what hit me the most. One afternoon, I found myself at the range outside town trying to brush up on rifle work. That's when I saw Evelyn in the distance, coaching a teenage girl on how to use a bow. No shouting. No big speeches. Just steady instruction. I watched her adjust the girl's elbow, line up her stance, and then quietly whisper, "This isn't about hitting the target. It's about learning not to flinch." That line stuck with me, because maybe that's what Evelyn really taught Usho: to stop flinching. From trauma, from fear, from the urge to run when things get messy. And now, the Summit Ridge Community Response Unit bears her name. Recruits train under her framework: quiet discipline, unshakable calm, purpose over praise. People like Evelyn don't make headlines. They make legacies. And somewhere, out in those ridge lines, there's a woman with a chainsaw, a medkit, and a homemade thermos of black coffee, still walking the woods. Still listening to the emergency channels. Still answering when no one else can. But just when folks thought her chapter had closed for good, it happened again: something worse, something no one expected. In the middle of summer, a wildfire ripped through the northern forests. It moved fast, fed by dry wind and old timber, swallowing trails and cutting off roads. Dozens of hikers were trapped on the wrong side of the ridge. Rescue choppers couldn't see through the smoke. Roads were gone. Evelyn didn't wait for orders. She pulled on a canvas pack, grabbed 3 canteens, a coil of rope, and a pair of smoke goggles so old they looked like relics. She headed out on foot. She reached the first group at dawn: 4 hikers, disoriented and choking, sitting in a dry creek bed. She gave them water, cut branches to create smoke signals, and marked their location with reflective strips for airborne crews. Then she kept moving. By the time authorities caught up with her 2 days later, she had rescued 15 people, led them, carried them, fed them, calmed them. She used natural shelters, hand-mixed electrolyte packets, even gave up her boots so a kid with blisters could keep walking. That fire scorched 12,000 acres. But it couldn't touch the legend of the woman who walked through it for strangers. This time, the town didn't ask. They acted. A bronze statue was erected near the Summit Ridge Fire Hall. It doesn't look like a soldier. It looks like a woman with tired eyes, holding out a flask, crouched beside a child with dirt on his face. Underneath it reads, "She showed up." The phrase caught on. Shirts, patches, mugs. But Evelyn, she still wore the same field coat. Still showed up at the shooting range every Sunday with her own gear and a quiet smile. The teenagers she mentored? Some became EMTs. Others joined the Guard. One girl, Sophia, went to med school. She keeps a photo of Evelyn in her locker. Nobody asked Evelyn to be a hero. She just never stopped being one. And today, if you listen close, you'll hear that quiet click of a CB radio in a cabin by the woods. You'll see boot prints at the edge of the fire trail. And you'll know Simeon's out there, ready to act when the world starts to burn. So let me ask you, who's your Evelyn Cole? Drop their name in the comments. Share their story. Because sometimes, the ones we overlook are the ones holding the line for us all.